This is the FCB Radio Network, home of the best personalities and where real talk lives. Online at fcbradio.com. FCB.
This is Kira Davis, and you're listening to Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. And this is a podcast where we engage in some critical thinking skills. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm feeling a little tired today. I'm feeling a little bit, I don't know, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted with all of this. Today's episode is about unity. And it comes up because yesterday, I'm recording on February 11th. Yesterday, Gina Carano was fired from Star Wars, The Mandalorian franchise on Disney Plus. And she was fired over statements that she made that were deemed offensive to the Jewish community. And I don't know much about Gina Carano. I know she was already in trouble because I can't even believe that there are people. I can't believe that there are people who do this, but somebody was combing through celebrity bios on Instagram and noticed she didn't have pronouns in her bio. And somehow that's offensive now. I guess I can't believe. I'm 46 years old. I came in to adulthood on the heels of the gay rights movement. And I can remember a time when that movement was about not being afraid to be who you want to be and not being afraid to claim your identity. And isn't that kind of what the transgender movement is all about too? Not being afraid to identify how you identify. And yet now we have mobs going after people who won't identify. Now it's not enough to just be like, hey, you can live your life. You are free to be who you want to be and no one can tell you. Now we're to the point where it's like, if you don't tell everybody who you are, then you're a problem. We live in the upside down. I just can't believe we're here. But that's where we're at. So Gina Carano, here's what the Disney statement I read first. I know Gina Carano's very popular on the show. I know she's like an action lady, right? Sorry. I just, isn't she in like a Jason Statham movie or like Fast and the Furious? And she's supposed to be really good. I've seen her I saw her one thing. Someone tried to give her own kind of action franchise for a minute, but she wasn't, at that time anyway, that strong of an actress. And so I remember seeing that thinking, she kicked ass, by the way, but she just wasn't real great in the role acting wise, but she's come a long way since then, I guess. And so this Instagram stunt, somebody got mad at her because she didn't put her pronouns in her bio. So she put beep, bop, boop. Again, remembering that she's a part of the Star Wars franchise. And then people got mad at her because it seemed like she was making light of it or making fun of it. And honestly, I don't really care what her intentions were. It didn't matter. It's none of your frigging business what somebody puts in their bio or what somebody wants to call themselves. Anyways, that was weird in itself, but that's the day and age we live in. But then when I saw she was being fired, I went to the statement. I saw it on Twitter, right? But my first thought is, what did Disney actually say about this? Because conservatives and liberals do this all the time. They all reframe. And conservatives were so mad on Twitter. And I was like, well, let me see what Disney really said. And so I went to their site, and this is the statement they made about her. Gina Carano is not currently employed by Lucasfilm, and there are no plans for her to be in the future. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. I'm going to read that statement to you again. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent. I had a listener write me to say the H. We do hit that H. Abhorrent. You'd think I know that as a commentator, but I don't know everything, believe it or not. Nevertheless, her social media posts denigrating people based on their cultural and religious identities are abhorrent and unacceptable. So much to break down here. So, again, you guys know, last week we asked the question, why don't we ask more questions? So y'all know how I did it. I didn't just take Disney's statement and I didn't take all the outrage I was seeing at Twitter. I went directly to Miss Carano to see what she said herself. Reading this statement from Disney and not knowing anything about what she said, my thought that I was going to go there and I was going to see her talk about how like Jewish space lasers and how the Jews are plotting to overthrow American society or whatever weird anti-Semitic stuff happens to always be flying around society for some reason at one time or another. That's what I expected to see. Instead, this is what I saw. This is what she said. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them, simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Now, there are a lot of people who are like, you just don't, it's Godwin's law, right? Like, you lose the argument as soon as you invoke Nazism. Gina Carano's an actor and an action star. I don't even know if she knows what Godwin's law is. You know, I wouldn't expect her to, but she made this point, and I don't even think it's a crazy point, because what she was saying is look, here's this point in history where people were taught and told that their neighbors were worth hating because of their beliefs. And now we live in this period in history where people are taught and told that their neighbors are worth hating because they have different beliefs, because they voted differently. It might have been an awkward analogy, maybe not the best analogy, but I'm not sure. I get this. I get this Godwin's law thing. I do. But two things. We've been making Nazi references for the last 4 years. Like today, I tweeted out a statement from Joe Biden after he won the election comparing Donald Trump to Joseph Goebbels. So, or Goebbels, however you say it. Sorry, Germans. I'm not apologizing for getting the name of a Nazi wrong. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about. So we've already been doing it. But okay, all that aside, double standards aside, does that mean we're never allowed to make the comparison? Like, when is it okay? When is it salient? We've spent years since World War II making sure we never forget the horrors of the Holocaust. It's one thing that I love about the Jewish community. And I've always said I think the Black community needs to take some cues from how they treat the Holocaust. Jews have been able to keep this legacy alive, this legacy of survival, this legacy of strength, and the legacy of beating back anti-Semitism and racism and hate to thrive, to survive and thrive. I mean, it's an amazing story that we should never forget. We should never forget it because we don't want it to ever happen again. But if we don't want it to ever happen again, are we ever allowed to point out when we see some steps happening that could lead to it happening again? And I suppose this goes for both sides. Like, wouldn't the left say that that's what they've been doing for the last 4 years? Is warning people, like, this is how we get to Nazism. This is how we get to... that's a question. I'm actually not even defending anything here. That's just a question. And I'd love to know what you all think, particularly my Jewish listeners. You can write me at kiradavis@pm.me and label in the subject line, put in the subject line JLTY. Let me know what you think. Anyways, that was a long way around saying that when I read the statement for myself, it clearly was not at all the way that Disney had framed it. And what disturbed me even more is that the very thing that she was talking about got her canceled. That what she was saying is, when we think it's okay to hate people for what they believe and we let other people tell us that that's what we should be doing, that's when it gets dangerous. And then she was fired for that. Now, getting fired is certainly not the same thing as getting tortured to death, obviously. I feel like I have to say that out loud because everyone is so sensitive about this. Anyways, look, I don't think Gina Carano should have got fired over this. This was a case of the mob dictating what she meant. And what she said clearly to me, I didn't see anything offensive about this statement, except for the fact that if you're just tired of people making Nazi references. But she certainly wasn't denigrating people. She was actually pointing out the horrific history of the Jews and how they were treated so poorly. which is not really something that a lot of people on the left have been doing for the last 4 years. It's not that I'm here to defend Carano. This isn't a Defend Gina Carano show. This isn't a Hate on Disney show. This is a show about unity, but this is what I wanted to start out with because it was the example that made me realize it's time to sit down and do this episode. I feel like we're in a really dark place right now. And I would love to have something positive to say to you all about the direction things are going right now. But given the fight that we're having, even at my work, at my day job, just to stay alive, just to be able to publish opinions that differ from the mainstream, what we're dealing with and what I'm seeing happening in the social media sphere, I don't know how else to put it. It grieves me and it's scaring me. Now, I still have a deep belief in the American spirit and that it will always thrive. And at the end of the day, it will have its say. And Americans want to speak freely. But right now, it just seems like it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. This thing has just gotten so out of hand. We're not even speaking the same language anymore. And that's what frightens me. So Biden comes out after the whole election mess. And I understand that part of the problem is what happened at the Capitol, but part of the problem there is also how it's being described. It's almost being described as some kind of military coup. And therefore, anyone who even suggests that, hey, the election, there might have been some issues with election fraud. We're not sure. We're not totally sure that everything was the up and up with the election. Even to just suggest that puts you on the side of right-wing nutjobs who broke into the Capitol on January 6th. 150 of those people, 75 million Trump voters, and yet now they're all being lumped into the same bucket. And that's frightening because you can't do that for anyone, right? As a black woman, this I know. I'm always begging people. Particularly on the conservative side, because I think it's so easy to look at us as black people and paint a big picture. Paint us all with the same brush. My friend and colleague Jeff Charles, who is one of my colleagues on Red and Black. You can go to Red and Black show. It's on every Saturday on YouTube. It's for black conservatives, and we just talk about news of the day from our perspective. Jeff hates it when we talk about the lack of black fathers in the black community, which is a subject that I feel very passionately about as someone who, basically grew up without a black father. I mean, there's a lot of people that grew up without black fathers. If you're white and listening to this show, you probably grew up without a black father. But as a black child growing up without a black father, I recognize how important fathers are to the black community and how some government efforts have sort of facilitated the removal of the commonplace father in the home. But Jeff doesn't like it. He doesn't like it when we talk about, hey, 72%, and that number's going down, thankfully, 72% of children are born into single-parent households. He doesn't like it when we say that because he says that paints a very broad picture of the black father. By just using that statistic and never really parsing it out and talking about what it means and where those black fathers are, it can make it sound like what we're saying is 73% of black men aren't involved in their children's lives. You can't paint, and a lot of black men are not, too many, but you can't take that brush and paint every black man with it. There are plenty of wonderful black fathers in our communities, and just because they're not married to the mothers doesn't mean that they're not active and engaged and wonderful dads. And I happen to be married to a guy who's a black father, the father of my children. And his father is still married to his bride of 60 years, and they had 4 children together. So I definitely know that these people are out there. I just say all this to say that as a black woman, I'm very sensitive about the idea of painting an entire picture with the same brush. And my friends and even some of my foes on the left would say that about people on the right, that you paint people with a broad brush. All gay people are like this. All black people are like this. All Hispanic people are like this. They're always accusing people on the right of doing that, and yet here they are doing it. I mean, In 2021, if most of us didn't have double standards, we wouldn't have standards at all. So I'm trying not to be surprised by this. I understand. These are just the double standards. But as you can hear, I'm working this out with you as I'm recording this show. My spirit is grieved to see what is happening right now. And I do not believe that this is most of America. I think this is a small portion of America that has somehow been amplified by social media. It makes it sound like all of America is like this. And I don't think it is, but it's getting to these dangerous levels where the social media mob is beginning to represent America at large. And the people in charge of our institutions, of our larger institutions and industries, are taking the social media mob more seriously than their customers. So the Carano thing made me wonder, where are we in this unity game? Biden came out after the mess of the election and said, well, I'm going to be everybody's president. I'm calling for unity. And that's what, every politician says after an election, whether or not it's a crazy one or a regular one. It's just politician speak. But whatever, that's what he said. Most people just ignore it, but this time, a bunch of people responded. A lot of celebrities, a bunch of people on Twitter. And there are a lot of people who said, oh no, F that. We don't want unity. Actor David Cross said in response to Biden's call for unity, he tweeted out, F that, I want blood. Rosanna Arquette said that the Republican Party were a Nazi Gestapo, and you can't unify with the Nazi Gestapo. Here's actress Rosanna Arquette. The GOP are a Nazi Gestapo, and they blindly follow their insane, unhinged leader and commit crimes against humanity. She said that on Twitter. I guess if you're Rosanna Arquette, you can say these things. If you're Gina Carano, the star of a hit TV show, you can't use the Nazi reference. Alec Baldwin said the same thing. We can have unity, but first we need to cut out the cancers. This is what Alec Baldwin, I think it wasn't Jimmy Fallon, other Jimmy. I forget, I get the Jimmys mixed up. Other Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel said, well, yeah, we do need to unify. That's important. But first, we have to cut out a cancer. You can't get healthy unless you cut out a cancer. And since January 6th, it has been nonstop effort to completely silence one side of the conversation and to completely silence anybody who is right of center. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here. I don't think I'm being dramatic here. In fact, I know I'm not, because I'm in the business and I'm dealing with this. And you guys listen to this show. I am hardly controversial. Oh, my messages of critical thinking and reaching across the aisle to understand one another, hardly controversial. And even I'm getting banned and shadow banned and having my work suspended and having to pull down articles that didn't use the exact language that the censors at Facebook or Twitter want me to use. Even I'm getting caught in this. Do you know what I mean? And if it's me, it's definitely going to be people who are closer to the center than me as well. So no, I don't think I'm being over dramatic about this. But if you think I am, feel free to write me and tell me why. Kira Davis at pm.me. I would love to hear why you think I'm being overdramatic about this and why I don't need to worry about it. And I mean that sincerely. I would love to be comforted with your ideas that I'm sounding crazy right now. That would actually make me feel better. So if you have some reasoned arguments, please. Reasoned arguments. I'd love to hear them. But we're looking at the idea of unity today. And when the president of the United States calls for unity and all his supporters say, sure, we need unity, but we need to cut out this cancer first. We need to get rid of these horrible people with dangerous ideas first. Are we even talking about unity anymore? Let's define unity. I went to Merriam-Webster dictionary. Here's the definition of unity. 1, the quality or state of not being multiple, oneness. That's definition A. And B is a definite amount taken as one or for which one is made to stand in calculation. It's an identity element. 2, it's a condition of harmony or accord. B, continuity without deviation or change, as in purpose or action. 3, the quality or state of being made one, unification. A combination or ordering of parts in a literary or artistic production that constitutes a whole or promotes an undivided total effort. And there's about 4 more variations of the definition, but they're all basically the same. You get it. So the idea is the quality or state of not being multiple, of oneness. Is it realistic to call for unity? Was it realistic for Biden to call for unity? Now, I don't think he meant it. That's just like I said, that's just a political thing. Every politician says that. But what I see happening now is I do see there are, I hate to use the terms left and right so much on this show, but this is what it's coming down to right now in media. And again, I implore you to tell me why I'm wrong. Please tell me why I'm wrong on this. Please. But I see this coming from the left. This is what I see now. I think not that it couldn't come from the right or hasn't in the past, but just the left has most of the media power, right now. Like, it's people who identify as left wing who run big tech and who run the big corporations and who run, all the social media stuff and most of the mainstream media. So that's what I mean. I'm not trying to accuse you personally, but I'm just, to have this discussion, I need to be able to use the terms left and right here, because this is what we're talking about. Unity among these polarized political entities or political stations in our society. So given the definition that I read, what is unity? What does it mean? Well, it means we're all one. We're all of one mind. Well, if you look at people like Miss Rosanna Arquette or Mr. Jimmy Kimmel or David Cross, you know what? I think they actually do have the idea. They know what the idea of unity means. Unity means everybody being of one mind. And the people who aren't of your mind need to go. And that's how you create unity, by eliminating one part of the conversation. And that's what we're seeing now. The idea that your disagreement is dangerous. And so we cannot unify as a country. We cannot be of one mind unless everybody feels the same way about the same things. I guess that is unity. So in a way, I think the left is calling for unity. But unity at the expense of half the country. It's important to remember that half this country is conservative. Half this country is liberal. These are loose terms. The spectrum is very wide between the two. So I'm generalizing, and I know that generalization is weak, as generalizations certainly usually are. But that's what I'm using for today. But basically it's split, and any pollster will tell you this. Anybody who's in the business will tell you this. It's always been this way. It's just there's one half and there's the other half. And it goes back and forth. Even with all the progress we make, and even with political correctness, and even with the way the cultural slide left, or the cultural slide towards liberalism, the country has always voted half and half, basically. And it's just which half is more pissed off in which election cycle. So we're all here together. Like, we're definitely not, unless we do some, are you ready for it? I'm about to invoke it. Unless we do some kind of like oppressive re-education camp thing, this is the situation that we live in. So how do we create unity among those people? Well, you got to get rid of half of the conversation. Now, we are America. We're not marching people off to death camps. We're not going to be doing that anytime soon. So how do we do that? Well, we ban people from the public square. We don't strip them of their freedom. We strip them of their ability to earn. We strip them of their dignity. We strip them of their public reputations. Sometimes we strip them of their support, their friends, their communities. We make sure that they are not viable voices in society. We segment them off from mainstream society. And then it makes it easier not to care what happens to them. That's how we achieve unity. That's the type of unity that I'm seeing today. Because I don't know, I haven't seen one liberal or progressive or left-wing op-ed on the subject. I haven't seen one that hasn't ended in, we want to unify and we want to heal, but we can't heal unless we crush this side, unless we crush whoever. We think of some people are just like, we just need to crush the weirdos at the Capitol. But some people are like, we need to crush anybody who questioned the election results. This net is too wide. I keep saying it. This net is too wide. That's what's scaring me. And that's the inevitable progression of casting a net like that when it comes to politics. That's the inevitable progression. It won't just catch the people you think it'll catch. It'll catch everyone. It'll come for everyone at some point. This is really the argument I make about every freedom-themed episode on this show, right? That it's easier just to apply the mechanics of freedom evenly, and that way no one gets caught in it. Well, once you start picking winners and losers, we're all screwed. We're all going to be losers eventually. Human nature is fickle.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
So I think the way unity is being defined lately is just sort of silencing one side of the conversation. Now, you guys know how I feel about that. I've done several episodes on censorship, and you can go back and listen to those. And I talk about the theme often, off and on throughout all of my shows. So you guys already know how I feel about this. But I want to ask, now that we've defined what unity is and how I think it's being applied today, is unity important? Why is it important? Who gets to declare unity? That's what I want to know. Who gets to declare that we are unified? Who is the person that stands up and says, finally, you know what? America is we are unified. We are of one mind. We are in a state of oneness. We are in a condition of harmony. When do we decide that is? As a nation. I mean, the president can stand up there and say all he wants. Hey, it's about unity now. We need to unite under one mantle, one presidency, one flag. But who decides when we've made it? When are we unified? There are a lot of people who weren't around on 9/11 or were very young on 9/11 who will try to tell you that we were all unified on 9/11. And for about 12 hours, we were all unified in our fear. We sure as hell were. That day was scary as you know what. And we were all unified in our fear. None of us really did know what was going on, and we were angry at the loss of life. But it was not. There were a lot of people who were unified in their hatred of the people that did this to us. But it wasn't something that lasted. It wasn't hours into the following day that there were people out there blaming America for, we brought it on ourselves. I mean, our own people. I'm not even talking about the nut jobs in the Middle East who were like dancing in the street and burning American flags. Like, not those fringe weirdos. I wasn't talking about them. I mean, right here in our own media, people now questioning if we deserved this. Was this George Bush's fault? Because we had just gotten through this big contentious election. Another shakeup, right? And it wasn't like that. We weren't unified. We were very divided almost from the start. There were always voices dissenting from the popular view, which was a popular view at the time, that America was under attack by terrorists. And then we needed to be worried about terrorism. So no, there wasn't unity then. People will try to tell you that, but they're either misremembering or they weren't there. And they're just interpreting history through their own lens. I'd like you to name one time that you would classify America as unified. Just give me one example of a unified America, a time when, let's go back to this definition, when we were in a quality or a state of not being multiple, of oneness, when we were in a condition of harmony, when we had continuity without deviation or change, or we were the quality or state of being made one. Can you think of one time in America that we were that? I would challenge you to consider that even whatever if you think you can retort to that point I just made, whatever is in your mind right now, I would challenge you to think about it outside the box that you live in, right? Because there might be a lot of people who would say, well, you know what? We were really unified on 9/11 after that happened. Well, if you weren't Muslim, maybe you were, you know? But 9/11 as a Muslim was a completely different experience. As an American Muslim was a completely different experience, right? So I would like to challenge you to think outside the whatever your cultural or your geographical or your religious or whatever the parameters of your box is before you respond to my point. And then ask yourself, were we really unified? Is there a time? Could we say, I mean, this whole country is based on the idea of disunity. We've been fighting with each other forever. We fought a whole war with ourselves to the tune of 600,000 lives. Think about the issue of slavery and what a dividing issue that was, even among households. Even John Adams and Abigail Adams argued bitterly over the issue of including the banning of slavery, the abolition of slavery in the new Constitution. Even then, homes were divided over the issue. Kira, World War II. World War I was a crazy war, and nobody can figure that out. Probably a useless war. But World War II, I think because he that shall not be named was a big deal, and the whole world was unified in this one quest to stop this conquering of the entire globe. Would you say that we were unified at that moment? To an extent. But if you were Japanese American, what did that look like to you? If you were German American, what did that look like to you? Did it seem like we were super unified? And don't forget, we like to romanticize the idea that the whole world was just unified in this battle against Hitler, and that there was no dissent. We all agreed, but that's not how it was either. Even while we were at war, there were many people who thought we shouldn't be at war, that we should be negotiating with the Nazis, that we should be seeking peace with the Nazis, that we should be seeking compromise. Neville Chamberlain, anyone? I mean, that's a famous name. So we weren't unified in World War II. And then after World War II came the Civil Rights Movement, not unreminiscent of what we've seen happening in our own cities over this past summer, the past year of 2020, where entire communities of people were outraged and burning down businesses and beating each other up and smashing windows and destroying their own communities. I mean, that was happening during the unrest of the 60s as well. You have Kent State. You have church bombings, fire hoses, police dogs, Emmett Till. I mean, do I have to run down this list? Were we unified? I bet there's a lot of white people who would have said, yeah, we're very unified during this time. I mean, sure, sure you were. Would black people feel the same? So all this to say that I don't know when this magical time that we've had that we're supposed to be unified is. I don't know when people think that was. We've never been unified.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
Cenk Uygur, I'm so sorry, Cenk. It's Cenk. I'm so sorry. After all these years, I do not know how to properly pronounce your name, mostly because I read it and I don't listen to it. I mean, I watch him a lot, but I never hear him say his name. And we're on completely different ends of the ideological scale. But he tweeted out something the other day that I thought made a lot of sense. He said, I don't understand why people keep talking about wanting to reach across the aisle. Congress isn't created to reach across the aisle. This is what he said. Mainstream media is obsessed with bipartisanship and unity. That's a process argument. Process is useless by itself. Results matter so much more. The real question is, what are we agreeing to? If DC unifies around terrible ideas, obviously bipartisanship is not the right goal. He means that now, if you know Cenk and you know his politics, what he means is the GOP is literally Hitler and we need to get rid of them. But the concept of this tweet I find to be fascinating, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. Unity, as I just read in the definition, means oneness of mind. Are we meant to be of one mind with people that we fundamentally disagree with on the most basic arguments? No. This idea that Congress is supposed to be working with each other and bipartisan and reach across the aisle. No, that's not what we vote for. That's not what Americans vote for. We don't vote for them to act as one. That's why some Americans vote Republican and some vote Democrat and some vote independent, because they like those platforms. Otherwise, we just would all vote for the same people. Congress is supposed to be gridlocked. I say this all the time. They're not supposed to work easily together. They're not supposed to. They should be ideologically opposed to each other. When we say we should be unified of one mind, whose mind? Which one are we agreeing to? If you're liberal, I know you're not agreeing to be of my mind. And I'm a conservative, and I'm not agreeing to be of your mind. So how do we find unity? If we are of different minds, and I'm saying we're supposed to be, by the way, I'm saying that's not a bad thing. So if we're completely ideologically opposed, we're speaking different languages. We're not even on the same playing field. If we can't even agree on the basic mechanics of the language we're speaking, how do we unify? To me, the answer is unity is useless and we don't need it. What we need is tolerance. Now, the ideas that move Americans to make certain moves, like whether or not we go to war, or whether or not we close our borders, or whether or not we trade with this country or that country, these are bigger ideas. And the way we create unity behind these ideas, the way we create, quote, one mind, is we have elections. And then the majority of people decide which person they want representing their point of view. And if the majority of people pick Joe Bob Smith because he's going to represent their views on trading freely with China, then that's who wins. And that's the unified voice that goes. Our voices speak during the election cycle, and then it is the people who are elected that speak for us, even those of us who didn't elect that person. So do we really need unity? No, we don't need it. It's useless. I think it's a pointless term when it comes to politics. What we need is tolerance. And you can go back and listen to my episode on tolerance. I think it is a very important one, more than ever these days. And the same themes run through my episodes on censorship as well. We don't need to agree with each other. We don't even need to really like each other, as long as we can come to a place where we can say about each other, you have the right to believe what you want. And I disagree with it, but I support your right to believe this. I may even think that your idea is bad. I may even think your idea is dangerous. And I do, by the way. I think these left-wing ideas of censorship are extremely dangerous. And they're scaring me. But I'm still not calling for the left wing to be censored. I am calling for them to be treated with the same playbook that the right is, though. Like, I think it's very interesting now to see all of the celebrity timelines popping up today who have made references to Hitler and Nazis and the GOP and Trump and Republicans for the last 4 years. And Gina Carano got fired over this very benign reference to the idea of hating people, of hating your neighbors so easily. She got fired for that, and it got framed as denigrating the Jewish culture. And now there's a lot of people who are bringing up old tweets, bringing up old screenshots and saying, well, maybe do these people have to go too? I mean, I think you should have to live by your own rules. I think this is about Congress. This is why I think Congress should be part-time. Congress should be in session 1 month a year. And then they all go home to live under the rules that they put into place so they can see what it's like. I'm a fan of that, but I'm not calling to cancel anybody, really. I mean, all I want is for all of us to have the same rules applied equally. I don't want to cancel anybody. I don't want the left to go away. We need the left. I say it all the time. There's no up without down. There's no left without right. There's no dark without light. We can't gauge our ideas against nothing. We need each other. So the best we can do is to learn how to tolerate each other, not like each other, not agree with each other, not even support each other. You can still really intensely dislike somebody, despise somebody, hell, even hate somebody if that's your bag. I think it's a bad idea, but if that's your thing. But we have to tolerate each other. I think if we can get to a place of tolerance, that's all we need. I tell my kids this all the time. I know I've said it in the last few shows because this topic keeps coming up. But I tell them all the time. And my kids are products of their environment, just like everybody else's kids. Don't think that because I'm some podcaster with hundreds of thousands of listeners that I've somehow got my kids trained to think just like me. No, they get their news and stuff off of TikTok and YouTube, and they have a lot of different points of view than me. And I never denigrate them for their views, or I never tell them that their views are stupid. What I do say is it's okay for you to believe what you want. And if this is what you want to believe, then that is fine by me. I only ask that you never hate somebody because they believe differently than you. That you never try to silence anyone because they believe differently than you. That's all. That is it. That is the baseline of decent behavior. Otherwise, have at it. Go ahead and talk about all the reasons mom is stupid because she's a conservative or whatever. It's fine. You do not have permission to hate your countrymen, your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors because of how they voted. It's unacceptable. If we just get to that place, we're fine. That, to me, tolerance is much better than unity. It's a much more worthy goal and a much more achievable goal than unity. Because the only way to create unity is to be of one mind. And in a country like America, the only way to create a people of one mind is to get rid of the people who are not of that mind. Again, who gets to declare when we're unified, right? That's the other thing. If someone's standing up and declaring we are now unified, that person's going to scare me. In a country of 330 million people, for sure, that person is missing a few voices. Right? They're not hearing everybody. So who even gets to decide when we're unified? That's not a decision that one person or one group of people can make. But tolerating is a decision that everybody can make. Tolerance is a decision that you can make on an individual level. As an individual, you can't declare this country unified. But as an individual, you can declare yourself tolerant. This is a thing that starts with you. So tolerance is a more realistic goal than unity. Do you know that during the American Revolution, one of George Washington's biggest challenges was keeping his troops together? We teach so little about the American Revolution today that a lot of kids think that it was just this band of merry men who were fighting the king across the seas, and they were all unified, and they had the same hearts and the same mind, and it was one goal. And it wasn't like that at all. America wasn't a country then. We were like 13 different countries. We're a bunch of different little countries where the people lived very different lives in each area. And they hated each other because they were always warring. They were always at war. This idea that somehow that was a time when we were unified, no. We were always overthrowing each other's colonies, and the leaderships of those colonies were changing hands all the time. People were not settled. They were not happy. There was no unity. George Washington had to figure out a way to make an entire army out of different tiny nations, some of whom he despised himself. I think it was the Massachusetts infantry that he felt were very particularly disgusting, that they had no manners. George Washington was huge on manners and etiquette. They had no manners, that they were filthy beasts, that they were unkempt. He did not care for them at all, and his contempt showed, and the troops knew it. He had to work really hard to tolerate the presence of people they didn't quite agree with or have affection for. He had to work really hard to lead those people, and he had to work really hard to keep them together. The American Revolution was not a revolution that was fought with complete unity. The whole operation nearly fell apart half a dozen times over the years of how long was the Revolutionary War? Like 9 years? 7 years? The whole operation was in jeopardy of failing at any moment this is why I love American history. I mean, it's just so fascinating. To me, it's God inspired to see like some of the things that had to come together for this to all happen. How just one piece of this puzzle, if it wasn't in the right place, the whole operation would have fell apart. It's a fascinating. It really is. It's one of the things that attracted me to Harriet Tubman's story as well. And it's Black History Month, so you can go find my movie Minty on YouTube. It's Minty, like Minty Brush Your Teeth, except it's Minty as in her name is Araminta, and her friends all called her Minty. She's not really Harriet, she's Araminta. And so you can find that on YouTube. It's a short film. It's 11 minutes. And but I picked her as the subject of my first short film because that was one of the things that I appreciated about Harriet Tubman's story, is that she had a lot of near misses, and some of them were miraculous. And it just made me think of like, we wouldn't even know this person in history if X hadn't happened or Y hadn't happened. We wouldn't even know her story. She just had so many close calls. That's a sidebar, but I just find it fascinating. But I think tolerance is the ultimate goal here. Unity schmunity. There's no time in history, to my mind, I might be wrong, and you can write me again and let me know, Kira Davis at pm.me. There's no time in history where we were all of one mind, all of one accord, all unified in anything, and certainly not today. So I think unity is a red herring. If you ask me, if anyone's calling for unity, to me, that tells me that they don't want unity. They don't want tolerance. It tells me that they want to silence half of the conversation. That's how I view it. Now, you may use the word sometimes and not mean that, but when I hear it from everything that's going on today, that's what it triggers in my mind. It's like those hate have no home here signs. How long do I have to look at these signs in my neighbor's yards? They've been out there for 5 years now. How long do I have to look at these stupid signs? I'm calling the HOA. I'm going to be that Karen. It's just like, these signs irk me so much. Anyone who is not hateful is not putting that sign in their yard. People who are not hateful do not have to declare it. You put that sign in your yard because there's somebody that you hate that you want to show that you hate. That's why you put the sign in that yard. I hate people who hate. I don't tolerate people who are intolerant. I don't tolerate hate. That's what you're saying. You're saying that you've decided that there's a whole segment of people that do hate, and so it's okay for you to hate them. That's who that sign is for. It's for those people. It's not for the other people like you who don't hate, because if y'all don't hate, y'all don't have to be reminding each other that you don't hate. You just know. So it's not for the people that are like you, is it? It's for the people that you think are hateful because you hate them. It's a hateful sign. I hate the damn sign. Ugh. Those are the same people that want unity at the expense of completely obliterating one side of the conversation. And anyway, again, to reiterate, unity is a pipe dream. It's for Hollywood. What we want is tolerance. What we want is to get to a place where people can understand that you can live harmoniously and peacefully in a society with people that you really don't like by learning how to tolerate what you really don't like. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, Kira, I don't tolerate hate. You know what? Go back and listen to my episode on tolerance. I'm not going to relitigate it. It's an excellent episode. In fact, it might be one of my best. So go back and listen to that. Don't write me until you listen to that episode. How about that? And then you can write me.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
I did a little bit of research, a little bit of internet research, for what it's worth. I wanted to see what the Bible had to say about unity. Because if there's anybody who would know about unifying, about unity, it would be God. It would be the Holy Spirit, right? It would be our creator. And I found a few verses. 1 Peter 3:8. Finally, all of you have unity of mind, sympathy, brotherly love, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Colossians 3:14. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brothers, rejoice, aim for restoration, comfort one another, agree with one another, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. Ephesians 4:3. Eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Now, I know I'm reading these and it feels like a contradiction. And this is just the translation, by the way. There's a lot of translating that goes into these things. But, here are some of the things that say, be of one mind. But if you know the context of many of these verses, it's not saying we need to be of the hive mind, or like what I've been describing as a progressive view of unity, which is getting rid of dissent. That's not what these mean. What it means when the word says we need to be of one mind, that one mind means love. And that's backed up by every other verse in here. There's a ton. I didn't read you all these verses. There's a ton. There's tons. There's hundreds of these verses in the Bible about unity, about being unified. Every single one, every last one is about being unified in love. So when they say unity of mind, what it means is becoming community. So it's not the same definition of unity. I just want to make that clear in case people are out there saying, hey, well, this contradicts your point, Kira, about unity. No, but what this is saying, and it's backed up in every verse. Every single verse talks about love, compassion, peace, humility. These are all the aspects of tolerance. And there are plenty of points in the Bible, too, where we are called to tolerate one another. And in fact, some translations might even use that instead of unity. So that's what this means. The word says that we need to be of the same mind if that mind is love. We're not all going to have the same opinions. Do you think that all the apostles agreed on the correct way forward for Jesus? No. A simple reading of scripture will tell you that. Did they all like the color red? If you're Catholic, does everyone in your church wear blue jeans, like blue jeans? Of course not. If you're Catholic, does everyone in your church vote Democrat? Of course not. Of course not. You guys are of different minds of things. You are unified under the mantle of love. And then you have your differing opinions. But that mantle of love covers all manner of sin, all manner of division. The Bible doesn't indict us for not sharing the same political opinions. The Bible invites us to embrace our differences under one mantle of love, tolerance, and humility. That's what I find in the scripture. That's what I see. And here's the scripture I'm going to end with, because I think this perfectly sums up my feelings. And I believe that I have backed this up over the course of, what show are we on now? 64 shows? That's easily got, I must be near 100 hours of talking by now on this show. I think I have backed up this belief that I've been consistent about it. And it applies to how I feel about living in my community, how I feel about the political atmosphere, how I feel about neighborly relations. Romans 12, 4 through 5. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members one of another. I'll read it again. Romans 12, 4 through 5. This is the, I believe this is the English Standard Version I'm reading from. For as in one body we may have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another. The, quote, unity that happens under a mantle. Here in the United States, it has happened under the mantle of a creator. Perhaps one of the reasons why we seem so divisive these days is that we've lost that common understanding, that common value of being created, of those rights coming from a creator. Perhaps that's a part of the problem. But regardless, this is how I look at our nations, how I look at the church. We're always encouraged, in the church, we are encouraged to look at each other this way. So you have your pastor, you have your deacons or whatever, but like everybody plays a part. The idea of the celebrity pastor is abhorrent to me. I find it to be disgusting. I live in the land of celebrity pastors. And even locally, some of my pastors are considered, quote, local celebrities. I hate it. They may too. I don't know. I hate it. Because we're all, the body is your finger is just as important as the head. It has a function. You know, you use it for something. You know, you need your heart. You need your stomach. You need your liver. Do you need your liver? Yeah, you totally need your liver, right? Kidney you can do without. I don't know, your wisdom teeth you can do without those, I guess. The point is that that's how I look at this nation. And that's how I look at this is why it's not always easy, but it's preferable and enjoyable to me and satisfying to me. I'll say that. It's satisfying to me to look at my fellow Americans through this lens of everybody being important in this country, regardless of your political view. Do I think we need to be crushing the middle class and lower class to save the planet through climate change legislation? No. But I'm glad that there are environmentalist activists out there, because guess what? There are greedy entities who would be happy to pollute all of our beautiful lands if it could make them money. We do need those people. They serve a purpose. We are many parts of the same body. The United States of America, under the same flag, the American flag. We need each other and we function together. That's how this country is a success. When we function in tandem, when we each play our role. We don't need to cut off our hands and our feet because they take us places that we don't always want to go. I see a lot of people getting out axes and trying to cut off hands and feet, and it's dangerous. It doesn't just stop with the person that you don't like. This is all the tolerance episode. I'm gonna stop. I'm starting to ramble. My spirit is grieved. I don't know how else to put it. What I'm seeing happening, it's easy. Again, I would say if you think that you're saying to yourself, right, if you're listening to me right now and you're saying to yourself, Kira, you're really exaggerating the issue. There's no such thing as cancel culture. And, you know, conservatives just get upset because somebody says an idiotic thing and then they get called out for it and they suffer the consequences. What's the big deal? Isn't that what you conservatives like? You deal with the consequences of your own action. This is individual responsibility. Just step outside of your box and see it from the point of view of the people who aren't in your box with you. Right? This is not for me. Although the argument today has been framed in terms of left and right, for me, and you know this if you're a fan of this show, it's not about left or right. My concern is for you on the left just as much as it is for every person on the right who's listening to the show, because I know that it doesn't stop with the people that you don't like, and it doesn't stop with the speech that you don't like. It'll be coming for you too. And in some cases it already has. So my plan is not to divide people with my opinions here. I'm just trying to make a point that we need each other. And once you've decided that someone is useless, you might as well be killing them. You know, is it just reaping the consequences of your speech if you lose your entire ability to work, to earn, to support your family, just because you made an awkward historical reference, or just because you questioned the results of an election? Russia, 4 years. Russia. Is it? People say, what's the answer? And my answer to that question has always been, the answer to suppressed speech is more speech. It's not less speech, it's more speech. And unfortunately, people like me are in a position today where we're just trying to stay alive right now. We're trying to keep our head above water. And so there are some things that we're just not even allowed to even question or even to bring up, to just bring it up. It's going to get you flagged on Facebook, even to just simply ask the question of people. So we're in a precarious position where the answer, or, you know, the solution is also being squashed. But the fight has to involve supporting more speech. What is the answer to creating more tolerance among ourselves? Is starting with ourselves first, starting right where we are. You can't tell anybody else how to clean up their house, and you haven't even made your own bed. And for those of us who do have platforms and who still have public voices, it is up to us to speak with reason, logic, and compassion, and yes, humility, as some of these verses have admonished us to. It is up to us to keep speaking, to keep reminding people that diversity is not just a color. That diversity is, well, hell, it's a mandate. JLTY isn't going anywhere until we get kicked off the internet. So until then, feel free to write me. Tell me what you think. Kira Davis at pm.me. Kira Davis at pm.me. Couple things I want to tell you about my book club. Over at davisnation.locals.com, we have started a book club. After the elections, it's kind of related to the subject today, because after the elections, I realized, like, once I saw that the big cancel fest was going on, I was like, okay, a lot of us are going to have to arm ourselves with knowledge. We need to stop being headline readers, and we need to start being more curious. I know a lot of JLTY listeners are already the curious sort. You have to be if you're tuning into this podcast. A lot of you are already the type to sit down with educational reading and do that. But COVID's been a real nasty bee, and it's knocked a lot of us off our game, including myself. So I want to get back to reading to learn, to reading to know things. And so I thought, let's start a book club. And so we've started a book club. It's the Just Reading Book Club over at davisnation.locals.com. You can join the book club. We're picking up the book even this day as I record. I will be picking our book. I took suggestions from people, and it's going to be a book rooted in history, culture, and or politics. The idea is just to, and it's not ideologically limited. I mean, we want to be able to enjoy the book, but we can learn from anything. So it's not limited to any ideology. What we want to do is we want to be learning. We want to be learning how to think critically about history, about culture, about politics. And then we want to learn also what people on the other side of the fence think and think the solutions are. And so that we can respond to those things. So we just want to increase our knowledge base. So come join the Just Reading Book Club. davisnation.locals.com. We'll be concluding each book with a private Zoom chat. You've got to be a subscriber to be a member of that. And yeah, come join us. We're going to be learning. It's not going to be, there's not going to be tests or homework. Maybe 1 month you don't get the book finished, whatever. It's no pressure. But I think a lot of us, if you're like me, you need a little bit of motivation to get in the learning mode again. So I hope this will motivate you. I've got some new social media. You can go to just JLTY on Twitter. That's just JLTY on Twitter, and look me up there and follow the account there. And on Instagram, just listen to yourself. Just go follow that account. Instagram's going to be a fun account because I'm just going to have show clips there and little announcements. So if you want to share something about this podcast with your friends and family who might not share your politics and you don't want to like weird them out with news stuff. I find it hard. Like I write a lot of stuff, but I write on a blog called Red State. And even though a lot of the stuff that I write over there is the same stuff I talk about here, just the very name of the blog can put people off. And plus, when you go to the site, you see the other stories that like the right-wing reporters are writing. And immediately it's like, this is a fringe site, or these people are crazy. These are right-wing nut jobs. I'm not going to listen to anything she has to say. I mean, it's not fair, but that's just a perception. And I understand that. So sometimes I share articles that you might not feel comfortable sharing with your friends and family. But this is an account that'll just be clips from the show, just stuff about the show. So it's something that you can share easily and not worry about getting sideswiped by a weird political statement or something. I'd like to encourage you to give me a review on iTunes and a rating. It helps so much. I appreciate everyone who has taken the time to review this show. It has meant so much. And sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I just go and read the reviews. Almost all of them are really, really great and encouraging. And so, it's just yet another way for you guys to keep people like me encouraged, because I don't know if you could tell today, but things are feeling a little discouraging lately, and I'm just trying to push through. And what else? Don't forget to subscribe to A Very Merry Podcast. Amelia and I recorded an episode this week. It should be out this weekend. And we're still recording. We're going to do a Valentine's Day episode. So if you're a Hallmark superfan like we are, you definitely want to be a follower of A Very Merry Podcast. And if you want some JLTY merch, I have a merch store. That's right, I have a merch store. Go to Teespring, Teespring, teespring.com/JLTY and find our store there and order some mugs, some shirts. I ordered a couple of masks. I figured I might as well get some free advertising out of having to wear a stupid mask everywhere. So I ordered a couple of masks. They had those. They've got mugs. Check out our store over there. What else? I don't know. If I haven't said it by now, it's not getting said. This episode has been long enough. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, thinking with me today. Let's move forward in the next few months and years with the idea of not pushing unity, but creating tolerance among one another. I really do think that is the key to living peacefully together. I really do. Talk to you next time. Bye.
The FCB Radio Network. First class broadcasting worldwide.